So, welcome back to this new episode of Full Throttle. Today, we are going to talk about new rules for 2021, or let's say starting from 2021 season for Formula One. This is a news that came out, let me say, more or less yesterday, so May the 28th. And this is honestly something that really came out in some way suddenly, I would say. We knew that something was coming along the way, but we actually expected just the budget cap thing and nothing more, honestly. But on the at the end, what came out um, is a complete new set of regulations for next year, mostly, apart from the aerodynamics thing that it's starting from this year. And I really think that it's a good thing for us to talk a little bit about it. I think this is a very game changer and a very, it really changed the way that Formula One is delivered as a show, as an entertainment, and also as a sport. And I'm not saying about and I'm not saying entertainment just because I used the wrong term. I actually think that this is very these are changes that has been made because Liberty Media really wants to create a sort of entertainment product for masses, actually. So basically, the idea is not just having a sport, but transform the sport and transform this, competition and this league into something that can entertain people that actually watch races. And before having some thoughts about it, just let's recap what happened, and see exactly what has been announced, and then I have some thoughts about it, and I would like to share. First of all, budget cap has been lowered. The initial news was about having a budget cap of 175 millions dollar per year. So this was the initial value that has been proposed, and everybody, every single team and every single owner and team manager, they were discussing the budget cap based on this value. While actually, what happened and what has been announced yesterday is that the budget cap for 2021 is actually 145 million dollars per year. So a very big reduction. 30 million in a year is not just a number. It's a lot of money, and this is something that actually comes to politics. Teams like Ferrari, for example, they were quite against the budget cap because these big teams that they have a lot of employees, engineers, mechanics, and other you know staff they have, and they use these staff, and they spend money on staff. Now with this budget reduction, they need to understand, you know where to cut their expenses, where to cut their cost. And so, for example, Ferrari, as you probably already know, is thinking about also moving, not moving, but committing into racing in other categories. There's lots of rumor about Ferrari going to IndyCar to race in America, maybe just as a engine supplier, or with a proper team. There are other rumors about Le Mans, or GT series. And I think this is not just for Ferrari. There are a lot of other teams that spends a lot of money, that needs to understand, what to do with all the people that they have, and they can't afford, because they have to cut, again, to cut costs, and so cut employees committed to Formula One. Another example is Mercedes. We actually don't know. There's a lot of rumors about Mercedes leaving Formula One starting 2022. So we actually don't know what are the reasons for that. But what is the rumor? The rumor is that Mercedes can leave Formula One and just become a engine supplier for several teams. And again, this is probably due to the fact that they want to cut costs, but they don't want to have a team that just is limited in budget expenses. So that's probably one of the reasons. On the other side, this is a very good thing for a small and mid-sized team, because from a financial perspective, there is a very balance now, and probably this is something that can level at the same baseline, the whole grid. We have to say that I'm not pretty sure. I'm not 100% sure about that, because honestly, it's not just about how much you spent, but how you are good in spending money in the right direction, and to the right topic, in the right zone, in the right area. So we still have to understand that small teams can now compete with the same financial level of bigger team, but they have to understand how to spend money in the good way, in the right direction. This is a very interesting point. Not finished yet on this side. There is another reduction. Actually, the reduction in budget cost, in budget cap, is not just for the 2021 season, but it's in 3 years. So it's 145 millions in 2021, 140 millions in 2022, and 135 millions in 2023. So there is a step in lowering the budget cap, mostly because, as we were saying before, there are teams that actually they are pretty big, and they have to understand how to reduce the number of people committed to Formula One. So it's very important on their side, to have some time to understand where to relocate all of these people. So this is a very, it's like a revolution in Formula One. We never had a budget cap. I'm a pretty big fan of the salary cap or budget cap in many sports. So, for example, in American sports, this is a very common thing. So I think this is a good approach. Another thing that came out, and I just tried to pick up some images from the Formula One website. This is the second big thing I have to say about the new regulation, which is the sliding scale rule for aerodynamic development. So basically, the sliding scale rule for aerodynamic development is about giving the possibility to teams that didn't perform quite well in the previous season to have more work in the wind tunnel, basically. So starting from this year, Formula One teams are limited to 65 runs in a week, wind tunnel runs in a week. So with the new regulation, actually the baseline is 40. So 40 runs in a wind tunnel for every week. But based on results of the previous season, actually, they can have their available number of runs in the wind tunnel increased or decreased, again, based on the result. So, for example, there are 10 teams, as you can see in the picture. So, if you have, if you are a team that finished at the fifth place in the ranking, you still have the 100% number of runs in the wind tunnel, so no change for you. If you won the constructor championship, you actually have the 90% of the total runs available for every single week. So actually, you're not gonna have a 40 wind tunnel runs per every week, but you're going to have 36 runs per every week. And on the other side, the last team qualified in the previous season ranking or any new team will have a 12.5% increase in the number of runs they can do. So basically, they can run 45 wind tunnel runs every single week. And so this is again a way to try to balance the forces into the grid. So enable small teams to try to recover and recover, the gap that they have from the more performant team. So this is again, I think it's a nice thing. There are other categories in motorsport that use this kind of approach, not exactly related to aerodynamics development, but basically, for example, in GT championship and in GT seasons, what they have is basically they are able to if you win some races, you get some more weight on your car. So other car are lighter and they can compete in a better way. I think it's the complicated thing is actually the way you control this thing. They are already implementing this kind of control starting from this year. So probably we are in a good we are already in a good shape to control this thing. But actually, it's very complicated and it's very hard to avoid like secret runs and so on in other for example wind tunnels, maybe not owned directly by the team but maybe by some suppliers. This is going to be tricky, so we really have to understand how it's going to look like. There are other things that has been shared by the Formula One regulation. And one thing is more related to, again, aerodynamics, right? So basically, the idea that came out from the Formula One regulation team is about basically avoid some development in specific areas of the car. For example, right before the rear tires and the rear wheels. This is an area where teams put a lot of effort to gain downforce without increasing the drag. So basically, you can increase downforce, of course, by having some more wings, basically, right? So wing angle, let me say that to be very simplistic, but a lot of people can understand that. So you can increase your wing angle and have a more downforce, but you have a lot of drag, right? So an area where a lot of people, a lot of teams, and a lot of engineers put a huge effort is this area you can find in the image, where basically you can work and you can find some solution on the aerodynamic aspect that can create downforce without introducing drag. And this is has been again a very um, uh, a popular topics amongst aerodynamics and engineers. So the idea from the Formula One regulation side is it was more related to try to find a way to block the ability of engineers to get more downforces in an area where you can get a lot of downforce, but you really have to um, work on complete fluid engine simulation. So very expensive simulation, very expensive uh, uh, kind of calculation that you can do. Again, with expensive processing, with expensive computer thing. You have to put a lot of effort in calculation with this thing. So actually, the main idea here is to um, basically have um, uh, these area blocked. So actually, you can avoid putting effort from the teams in this area, and let the teams and the whole team putting effort in other areas. So for example, again, wings, it's a good thing. And at the same in the same sorry for the images anyway, but in the same way, you can have people focusing on having drags, on having downforce by working in different areas, right? So the idea again is to try to avoid all of these let me say expensive processing and expensive calculation uh, from the team side, um, and reducing again cost. And on the other side, it's not just about reducing costs, it is also about let me say trying to level the performances of all cars, and let me say let the team be more equivalent one team from the other, right? Because again, this is a way um, to make everybody at the same level. So I think the good thing is, once again, the good thing is about try to have all of these 10 teams on the same page at the same level. I think this is the main purpose. I think this is it's an approach that it's more related to the American way of managing this thing. It's more related to the American approach, like the NFL or the NBA or Major League Baseball. So having the best team on one side, have and the worst team on the other side, and put the worst team in a scenario or in a context where he actually is able to compete with the best team, because he has been um, again has been put in a situation where he can pick like more win runs, more he can pick the best choice, and the best team can't do that, because actually we actually want to level teams. Again, this is very common to, for example, the way the NFL perform his draft. So the best team in the NFL pick the last number in the draft, and the worst team in the NFL, they pick the best player coming from the college. It's basically the same thing, right? So the idea, once again, I think it's more related to how we want the Formula One sports gonna look like, actually. So the idea is, okay, this is our approach, very, very, like, let me say, a very uh, common approach, a very how can I say, a very sportsmanship oriented approach, where a lot of people can do the good job, even if um, you know even if mm, even if you're like a small team, you can do the job, because again, the regulation puts yourself in a situation where you can do the job. So a very American oriented regulation, actually, a very American oriented regulation, and I personally like it. um, I'm not sure if the typical Formula One fans is gonna appreciate that, because actually this is something that usually don't like. European guys, they are quite against this kind of regulation. But in my very own opinion, I think this is a good way to do things. I think this is a good way to try to level again the forces in the grid. I think it's not that bad, actually. I think it's something that Formula One had to do to make it a more how can I say, a more leveled context. I think that the scenario that we are going to have right now is really related to, we really try to make this like a global sport again. So very different from what happened, in the last years, where yes, Formula One was very, you know, popular all over the world, but actually it was, something that was very European as a style, right? So the idea, again, I think, and this is true also for the last thing I would like to talk about. So regulation for 2022 is really about trying to make this something, that can excite people again. And the recipe from Liberty Media is, if we want to people, if we want to have people excited again, we need to have a more level, set of cars, basically. So actually, that's why they are trying to make the whole set of cars at the same level. I think it's a good move. I think it's a good idea. And this is true also for the new regulation. So they moved the new regulation a year in the future because of the pandemic thing that we had. But also, I think that the final purpose is to actually have, again, some cars that are more equal one from the other. So again, a very American style, like an IndyCar, where you have basically just one chassis and different and several engine supplier. I think they're trying to follow more or less that direction, with trying to maintaining some peculiar way of the Formula One, but the approach is more or less that one. I think that we have to appreciate, they are trying to do this thing, because we had some action in 2017 and 2018, because Ferrari was not at the same level of Mercedes, but sometimes sometimes it very close to Mercedes. But honestly, starting from 2014 up to last year, we just have a dominant team. And before it was the same with Red Bull. So anytime Formula One changed their, regulation, we had a team that was able to take some advantages by the changing regulation, and they keep the advantage for, you know, the whole timeline, the whole set of years where you have that specific regulation. And this is due to the fact that you can't test in tracks. You just can, do simulation on, in your headquarters, but doing simulation is not the same than doing tests on tracks. So it was very hard for other teams to, recover the gap that they had. So I think that the idea basically is to changing the regulation once again, because otherwise we can't have teams that can match the Mercedes superpower. On the other side, having a new regulation, because we need to have cars that are heavier. So there's another change that has been made. We have heavier cars. So for example, like more than 700 kilograms for an empty car. And the idea again is to have cars that can fight on track and stay close, without losing too much downforce. This is the main thing for the regulation. But on the other side, if you take this technical regulation together with the budget cap and together with the sliding doors, sliding scale of aerodynamics development, it's a way to avoid of having a team that can just take too much advantage and nobody can recover. So I think that recipe is not that bad. I think it's a nice tentative. We have to understand how it's going to be implemented. So in theory this is a very good thing, but we have to wait and see if we are going to have in reality what Liberty Media would like to do in theory, right? So this is the situation. Again, I think that it's very, very American style. I think it's not that bad. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good tentative. I really like the American style in sports. Again, I think that the main problem that Liberty Media will face is that they comes from America. They have a European C level, for example, Ross Brown, managing director, so very, experienced Formula One guy. But at the same time, they have this American approach that not everybody will understand. So again, on my side, super unhappy of having this new regulation and this new approach. On the other side, I'm not sure, the average fan of Formula One will appreciate that. I think that at least they will try to appreciate, again, the fact that they are trying to do something new. But for example, there has been a lot of, complaints about, for example, having music at tracks. I was in Monza in the last 2 years, so 2019 and 2018. There were a lot of people complaining about the fact that up to the warm-up lap, there is DJ playing music, and it just, the music stopped basically at the last corner of the warm-up lap. And there's a lot of people complaining about that because, probably it's also a matter of average age of Formula One fans. So they're not, too young and too happy on about these modern stuff. But anyway, I appreciate the tentative. I think it's a good mood. Um, I think the idea is we are in a strange period where Formula One had to they have to um, change themselves, and it's a matter of surviving what happened with the COVID. So they were forced by um, natural events on changing things, and they basically decided to take what happened as a good excuse to make radical changes and say, hey, we tried to do that because we were in a very strange situation. We were in a very even dramatic situation, and for some aspect, at least in the sport aspect. So they just take the chance to make um, a deep change. Let me say, with the excuse of the COVID and the pandemic thing. But I think that I like the bet. I like these bold move. I think it's a good thing for, again, for not just for the sport thing, but also for the entertainment side of the sport. Um, Otherwise, we are going to have, I don't know how many years of dominance of Mercedes or any other team that will be able to give the better interpretation of the new regulation. And again, I don't think this is a good thing for the sport. So very American approach, very NFL like or NBA like approach. I like it. See if this is something that will work in a completely different context, like Formula One. It's gonna be interesting to have a look how these things evolve. And I think, just to conclude this episode, I think that the other interesting thing is that the political side and the political effect of this thing. So basically, um, for example, the fact that Ferrari again is trying to understand where to move in addition to Formula One, where to put their effort in addition to Formula One. I think this is a very interesting thing. I guess Ferrari is not gonna be the only team trying to understand how and what to do. In the future, there are teams that they have to understand, if continuing to Formula One is the right thing, for example. So I mean, it's gonna be super interesting. Okay, so I think that's the end of the episode. Like to see your comments in the video, so we can discuss in the future. I think that we're going to have some more episodes on this thing because there are a lot of aspects that we can dive deep. So hope to get your comments as soon as possible. Okay, so thanks for watching, and see you soon. Bye.